service development, which is what led me to be where I am now. So, and it's a great thing that you've done today to create this platform to share information that's valid and that could help us as a people.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Uche, I leave it to you. Do you want to continue?
The last one, no, not the last one. There's the next one. Does institutional racism exist and play a part in healthcare in the wider political environment? Hello? Anyone?
Anyone want to join in? Does institutional racism exist? And if it does, how
Can
does
I
that
just add something? And institutional racism, not just in hospitals. Does institutional racism maybe in terms of socioeconomic status of BAME people? It may be in terms of how they interact. It's a question, so feel free to engage with it how you like.
and your thoughts? Hello?
Hello.
Anyone?
I think I can just say something about this subject. I think it's a really it's a really controversial question. It's difficult to sit down and say that people are racist. It's, but when, my experience of many years I've worked in the NHS, it's not, there's many roles like the last speaker before me mentioned that are not really discussed. The access to getting into management, leadership, these sorts of roles, and you mentioned there's a small percentage of these people who reach these goals from BAME. I think part of the access problems is there isn't any sort of drive to help people to get to these positions, and therefore a lot of clinical workers remain frontline clinical workers until they retire with no awareness whatsoever about how to reach these positions. Is almost unattainable. Whether this is intentional, I do not know how someone, maybe, or maybe it's because of we're not supporting each other, or a lack of information, or lack of awareness, or whether there's some structural boundaries. Maybe this is something that could be addressed in medical school, nursing school, about there are other pathways apart from being frontline clinical workers. Maybe it's a lack of information. I don't know if the information has been intentionally withheld, but this is the question about how to increase access of BME workers into these management leadership roles.
Just to jump in, just to clarify.
Someone's jumping in?
Yeah, just to jump in, just to clarify, institutional racism doesn't have to be intentional. So the chances that the NHS is institutionally racist, I would say, are pretty high. It's not to say that anybody's doing it on purpose, but like it's been echoed, and again, I used to work in NHS, as it's been echoed by multiple previous speakers, the higher you go up, the less of us you see. And there will be multiple reasons why that's the case, but one of them will be is that systems that allow people to go up the chain are not set up for BME communities. I'm not an expert in it, but we know this is talking specifically about the UK. We know that there are other institutions that have been found to be institutionally racist. I can't imagine that the NHS is any different.
Can I jump on that?
Yeah.
So I used to work in the NHS as admin, and I left because of this sort of situations. I was fortunate enough to have people that were higher than me were all Black, so they would let me come to meetings, and I worked my way up in that way, but it got to a certain point that the thing is, I don't think I would call it quite racism, but I would say that there's a blame culture. The cultures aren't quite not conducive, but they're difficult. So you do what you have to do, and you find your own, for lack of a better word, your own squad, your own clique. In every NHS organization, be it in the nursing department and the doctors, it's very cliquey because it's the culture. There's a lot of blame culture. There's a lot of, I need someone that has my back in case of anything. So you're going to have one auntie that works in HR that, can hear something and just warn you, say, yo, listen, they've been talking about. So that's what I kind of that's a lot of the things that I dealt with, and then I left because of that. But then again, you have to be really careful, because this can also go into every other sector, because now I'm in training, and again, it's the exact same thing.
Okay.
Hi, can I comment here? Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. My name is Alex. I haven't spoken. I've been listening, and it's been great so far. Thanks, guys. I'm a financial services consultant, so my views on the whole COVID is slightly different. I'm more of a numbers guy, but just want to talk about the whole racism thing. I don't think we should be shy to say it exists, because for me, it's rife in modern Britain, and this is not just cutting across just NHS. I'm talking about everywhere, from education all the way down to like standard employment. There's a structural racism that has been playing a part for years, and I think it's something that until we actually admit it, that's when we can actually tackle it, as opposed to us just tiptoeing around it. I'll give you real life examples. So let's keep it raw and very uncensored here. I work in a building that has over 5,000 people. In the UK, for example, there are about 60 partners. When partners are at the very top of where you can get to in my organization. I work for one of the financial service organizations. There are like 60 partners in the UK. There are only about 2 black partners. So now, if you don't think that is a problem, then I don't know what racism is. Because you can look at it from an angle of, okay, maybe they're not good enough. But if you actually start dicing and slicing everything from the very beginning as to what racism actually is and why it actually exists, then we can start tackling the issue. When you look at the people at the very bottom, as someone said earlier, that you worked in an admin role, if you don't have someone at the top that looks like you, talks like you, and acts like you, it's very difficult for you to actually rise. What you end up doing, you end up moving to a different organization. But what was actually changed there? Nothing. A lot of firms now are going down the route of diversification. They've got this whole yearly thing that they do. Okay, they try and diversify in terms of employment and whatnot. But if you look at the stats, what changes? It's one thing to collect 50 CVs around the BAME community, but it's another thing to actually employ someone from those 50 CVs. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that organizations nowadays look at these things as a tick box exercise, but actually don't do anything about it. So until we actually come together and actually admit that it does exist, and how do we tackle it, as opposed to asking, does it exist? I think that's when we start moving ahead.
Can I ask a question? The 50 people who are in the board, are they the most experienced? What do you read at the blacks as well? Why do you think they've made it to the board? What are the specific reasons? Is it to fill up numbers? I mean, basically,
I'll keep it raw with you. It's just to fill up numbers, and that is the bottom line. And the reason I'm actually saying this is because I've had conversations. I like having real conversations. I've had conversations with my white colleagues around this, and everyone knows. Like, we know, blacks know, white know, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, we are all we've got. So you almost look at it like, I've got to work twice as hard as this guy. And in addition to that, I need to almost act like him to be able to get this role. I said, why would I want to be someone I'm not to get this role?
Can I add to that? That kind of makes me think about being the token black person. There's always a token black senior person.
Yep.
Like, no matter where, and that's the person that's always had my back. Like, I think about it, like, in a space of like 5 years, I had about 17 jobs, and it's because I couldn't get anywhere higher in where I was. So I got the experience, and I moved on, and then that black person, that black token. Do you know? I don't want to be the only person qualified. So now come in, you're black, yay, we're black. Let's do this thing together. And it used to bother me being the token black person, but it's like, you kind of have to, if you want more of us to be there, yes, the fact that we got there because of that, it's a thing that hurts my heart. But you know what? Fine, I'm here. Let me show them that I actually deserve to be here.
Okay. Coming back
to it, Samson. Can I add a different twist to it? Guys, honestly, you guys, all the information you've given regarding racism and discrimination in society is perfectly validated. But there's a slightly different spin to it, which I see a lot. I've been in management for 14 years in this country. And a lot of times what I notice, I've seen promotions across the board. Most times the BME community, a lot of the staff from the BME community are not actually ready when there's a position that comes up. I've done interviews where people think because I'm of this color, I'm just gonna take them into a position because of that. But when you look at their track record, you find out that their colleague who is of a different kind is actually doing slightly better than them. When we take nurses, for instance, you might have a nurse who has 19 years of experience from a BME community, but their IT skill is not really up to scratch. And when you have a nurse who's of a white background with maybe adequate nursing skills, but very strong admin background and skills, then you will actually.
Why are they not ready? As someone has asked, why
Exactly.
are they not ready?
I was going to just chip in there real quick.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
So
Shay.
I actually have an example of that. One nurse, she really, and again, it's a cultural thing, and I fought for her because she was a mum of, I want to say 6 or 7, but like she had a lot of responsibilities. These courses, they are outside of work. They're not gonna like. It's very hard, especially for a frontline person, to get time off, like an actual shift, to go and invest in themselves. Now, this particular lady, she didn't have time. She has 6 kids. She has to cook and clean. And the husband, again, he wasn't quite supportive. So for her, when things came up that, you know what, she has experience for, she just hasn't got the support, I would say. So I guess that is a very big thing, especially with nurses that I've worked with.
Okay. Sorry, just to go back, is that treated with patients as well? Do patients, so you as patients, do you feel with going to the doctors as Black people were treated differently as well?
Definitely.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
If I give an example, we have a step-down rehabilitation household where people come in from 24 hours to 6 weeks for rehabilitation and go back to the community. There's a tendency to push the BME patients back to the community quicker, even if they've not attained their rehab goals, than the white staff, the white patients.
Why is that so?
Yeah. We've actually established that this is a true account of what goes on in terms of discharge back into the community.
Has that been
why
audited?
Is that so, Victor?
Again, if I'm talking about where I am, the core of the therapy team are whites, so it might have an impact in how they view people. They view the Black patients as people trying to play the system, but when the white patient does it, they don't view it that way. Suddenly they get very emotional, very sensitive about their needs. Oh, they don't have house, they don't have this and that. You know, look, I've gone into an interview where someone just cried, "I lost my mom," because of their color kind. There's a lot of sympathy given to them, and they were hired, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yes, that happens.
Quickly.
Yeah.
There's 2
My
polls in the
rabbit
chat.
side.
So some of you might not have seen it. If you can just, because not everyone's talking, obviously, but for those that are listening, there are 2 polls in the chat. So if you bring up the chat by the side, if you can respond, please, just to get like a feel of where everyone in the group, what they think and stuff.
Okay. So go ahead, guys. What you were saying.
I was just going to add one thing, something real quick around the last discussion on why are certain people not ready. I was reading an article not a few days back, and that was actually quite apt that I read it then, where the MP David Lammy was actually critical of Oxford University's admission policy. Between 2015 and 2017, apparently there was not a single Black British student. Can you hear me, Samson?
Yeah, I'm listening to you.
Yeah, there was between 2015 and 2017, and this is just a little point just to add. There was not a single Black student in Oxford University. So when you start looking at systematic and structural racism, it's not just because you say someone is not ready or why are certain people not in certain roles. When you actually trace it back, how can we look for the roots and actually start fixing that problem? Yes. Why? Because if you own an organization, if you own $1 billion organization, you would want to obviously employ and promote people who you feel their CVs are on par. So when you now start looking at CVs of BAME and the white people, you start seeing where the differences lie. Saying people are going to Oxford and whatnot, while the others are not. Why are they not going to those universities? Why are they not going to those colleges? Is it because of what they look like? Is it because of where they live? When we start unpacking these issues, we'll start fixing the problem. If not, we just keep playing about with the top.
I completely agree with you, Alex, and I think that the point you made, I'm an actual example of that. I was at UCL for my first degree in pharmacology, and I did medicine as a graduate. Now, at most graduate entry for medical school, they have separate programs, but UCL doesn't. So I jumped in with people who just started medical school as 18. About 40 or 50 every year of that 400 group of medical students were grads. I was the only Black grad for the entire 6 years I was in UCL. And I will know if I was, because I was used to, people will come and leave UCL, graduate. I know if anyone's coming in, I would know. And this is UCL. I hope things have improved. I doubt it has, but you're completely right. Am I any better than my friends who all got into King's? Am I better than my friends who got into Queen Mary's for graduate? Don't think so. Are they worse than me? No. And I think that's how did I get in? And I think that's the key. And I think for us, we know there's an issue. We can accept that. And I think, like you said, Alex, we need to be looking at how to improve on that, how to share our networks, support each other in best ways we can. Even something like this is useful.
That brings me to the next point, actually. What efforts have we seen being made to tackle these issues? What are we doing by institutions and policymakers, by third sector voluntary organizations, and obviously within the BAME community? What efforts are being tackled?
Can I share about my organization, what they're doing?
Sure.
So at NHS England, there's a dedicated department called Race. It's called RES, and I think it stands for Race Equality and something Sensitivity Department. But ultimately, their sole goal is to look at the statistics of the BAME community within the organization, who gets access to promotions. They even go into things around disciplinary, look at the representation for BAME in those areas, and they have started a program of racial sensitivity, I think they're calling it, and education, where they're going across and trying to ensure that on some of the interview panels that there's being representation, that people have specific training around these things. Well, I think this is all well and good. I still haven't seen enough evidence that this is generating real change. I think things are happening, but not as quickly or as much as it needs to happen. There have been some trusts in the region who have done really good work to try and improve their statistics. East London Mental Health Trust is one of them, and it was their model that NHS England has been adopting to try and change things there. I think what we need to do as a community, because somebody in the chat was saying that we need to take responsibility. I think us as a community, those of us who've managed to push through some of these glass ceilings, we need to go back into community and show our young people from early and as they're coming up that this is possible. Try and guide them in terms of the pathway to achieve these things. You know, be mentors, be available, share our experiences, the good and the bad, and also be that support, because someone else talked about that. A lot of the times when I've had difficult times in the organization, sadly, sometimes it's my own people who look like me, who feel that they have to be even more difficult because they're Black and they have to show that they're being hard. So they're giving me a rough ride, you know? So I think we really need to really be our brother's keeper and each other's keeper and make that support tangible and real.
I totally agree with you being your brother's keeper, but you don't want to be your brother's keeper at your detriment, because a lot of times, from personal experience, I've actually worked sometimes. Sanson and I knew each other from uni. I've employed people that I knew personally, and they come in and think because they know me, they don't have to work anymore. They just have to carry on with very negative attitude. And you know what? I have to be fair to everyone, and they get the sack. So I see this a lot. Like the last speaker just said, you know, when you have people in our community working with someone from their own community, there's a tendency for people to, you know, have the wrong attitude towards work because you're a Black manager, you know, and that is not really acceptable.
Yeah. And I think, I just want to quickly say something around that space. Totally agree with you. And I feel like there's a very fine balance between being professional and for people taking you for a ride or for a mug because you're of the same color. I totally agree. Yeah, but I almost think where we should be looking to fix this issue is taking a step back and going down to the roots. And when I mean the roots is love our youngsters. They don't know any better. For them, ignorance is bliss and knowledge is power. Unfortunately for them, a lot of them don't know any better. If you go to communities, you'll see that a lot of these young guys don't think they can make it out.
Yeah.
As simple as that. They just feel they get.
Sorry to cut you in. Why is that so? Is it what we spread? Is it how we go back to it? Why? How do we tackle that?
Yeah, I'll start with tackling and I'll take it back. For me, Samson, tackling is just education, and by education is I'm not talking about building a school or anything like that. But like you said, we're all in a position where we can actually share knowledge. A lot of people don't know. A lot of our young people don't know these things. I'm actually part of a program at work where we actually invite students like underprivileged schools and whatnot to come in and just teach them about working environment. And I've taken about 5 sessions now, and I can count the number of white people I've seen. It simply means the white people don't go to this type of school. And a lot of the students that I speak with, they keep telling me the same things. I remember I asked the guy, what do you want to be when you grow up? And by the way, no offense to any firefighter in this chat, but he told me firefighter. And I asked him why. And he said, because that's what I can get. And when he said that, that actually touched me because I felt, why not a doctor? Why not an engineer? Why not a consultant? He said firefighter because in his mind, he's been programmed to think that's all he can get. And because that's all he knows, Samson.
Where does he get this programming from? So me asking, what is it? Is it down to the parents? Is it down to what the media says? Where does this come from?
I just feel you're a product of your environment, Samson. And by that, I mean, it, like you rightly said, is what your parents are telling you, is what people around you are telling you, is what you see every day on a daily basis. So if you don't think you could do anything more than that, or you don't know 1 + 1 is 2, in your mind 1 + 1 is 11, that's all you're going to believe. And a lot of times it's not their fault.
I'm sorry. Can I add to that? It's those stupidly, fantastically stupid career days at schools where you get these bunch of people come. You have fire brigade there, you have army there, you just have what's the word? You have what's the word? They're like skilled labor jobs. Those things used to really, really annoy my spirit. Like, why don't you have a business person there? Why is it there's not enough diversity? And it's just I don't think there's just not enough. And it's a lot of schools have that, and it annoys me very much.
Something can I add to it? You know, I went to a meeting recently, and a lot of Black people, you know, from our communities were there. And then someone was asking a question. I asked someone, what salary do you think should be befitting for you, for your role? And I was shocked because a lot of people were okay with 35K, you know, 30K. I was really shocked because that's not acceptable. If parents could be, you know, comfortable with 35K salary for the job they do and all the degrees they've acquired from Nigeria, from wherever, then that is shocking, because we need to set high standard for our kids.
So is it down to our ignorance as well? So
yes.
So rather than saying, you know, I'm just saying, is it down to our ignorance of us not knowing how to get certain things, whereas other races and other counterparts know better?
I think it's not knowing as well. Can I just add to this quickly? There was a little boy that I once saw on the train, and he was reading a book about coding, and I was so impressed. Like, these are things that even I can't even comprehend it, but he was on the train, and I just started chatting to him, and he was like, you know, I want to be a service manager. And I was like, okay, but why can't you, if you can do this, why can't you build your own app? He's like, no, I can't do that. I'm like, why? It's the same sort of thing that you're doing now that those people are doing that are making millions. And he couldn't just comprehend what I was saying. And I just gave him like this website. But that little boy that has potential, he stopped at being an IT service manager. Why is no one inspiring him? Where are the Black app designers that are out there? Where are the Black doctors that can inspire him?
I think the problem is that we don't know what we don't know. I mean, everyone is limited by your imagination.
Yes. Yep.
Imagine what you don't know. Even us as professionals, there is more for us as our you know, many years in this, but we still don't even know how to get there. So for the people who are younger than us, at least, you know, we can share what we know. You know, expand their horizons and let them know the reality that yes, you can be a doctor. Yes, you can be, because I am one. You can be one. And that's, at least do things like what we're doing now to strengthen networks and empower the young people in practical ways, and more for the inspiration and having mental, that will go a very long way. I mean, for me, when I was applying to university, never even heard of Oxford, Cambridge. As far as I'm concerned, community college is what they had planned for me. But, I went to a different school, a grammar school, and they planted a different seed in my mind, and that changed my whole path. I ended up going to UCL. But, even when I went to UCL, there was only 9 people out of 300, nine Black people out of 300 people every year. So there's a problem.
Do other ethnic communities support the communities more than we do, or is it?
I think Asian people, they are really good at supporting their community, and I think even white people, they're quite, because they're quite established in society. Nepotism is quite easy for them, but Blacks, we're neither established in society, nor are we very good at, our networks are not very strong. So we'll all struggle along very independently. So I think a group like this is excellent, because this is probably one of the very rare times when I see expertise from different fields, people coming together and sharing ideas. We don't often do this, but this is very valuable, because instead of struggling alone, coming together, and you can have a greater impact in that way, working together in networks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uche, do you want to close this and continue with
I think it's kind of attached to what we've just been discussing, but also bringing it back to COVID is what do we do? What next? It's great to discuss these things, but then how do we then take that, and what can we do to then, if this was to ever happen again, not be in the same position that we're in today? What can be done differently?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So, my name is PG. Praise God. One of the things that someone already touched on, though, is education. I work with the NAACP here in the United States, and one of the biggest things that I do, I'm not a doctor, but I have so many variations of working in the medical field, in the hospital, being a therapist, and now working on drug safety. But one of the biggest things that I see is that people really do not know. You see something on TV and you readily believe it. We have people here taking chloroquine and dying. We have people actually thinking that you can use disinfectant. You're gonna die. That's common sense. Well, it's common sense to us. Yeah. And we know, but no, people are actually using it. So education is one of the biggest things, because every time I volunteer going to the Black communities, the poor white communities, the Latina communities, it's literally the same thing. When people don't know, they are very, very detrimental to themselves and everybody around them. One of the biggest communities that I deal with here, though, is the poor white community. They really don't know. They believe everything they see. They are very self-sabotaging, including the way they vote. So those kind of things fall into how communities respond. For example, the communities around where I used to live, the hospitals are failing because they have no donations. They have nobody helping them. Ventilators do not exist. So by the time you get help, people are dying. People have already died. So how can we do better next time? They need money, but for the most part, they need education. People need to know, the information has to be out there. People need to understand that these things are possible. And without that education, we're going to see it again.
Yep. Yeah, because
I love that. Yeah. Can I ask?
I agree.
COVID again. In terms in terms of the ventilators and PPEs and so on. Do you think they've kind of, in terms of other ethnicities and Blacks, do you think it's been disproportionate? So the hospitals in Black communities aren't getting as much equipment as needed to tackle COVID?
No. You mean in the UK?
No,
In the UK, in the
not in the
US,
London
wherever
region.
you are, Canada.
In the UK, no.
No, not in the
No.
London region. Not at all.
Not in the
US,
UK.
yes.
In
In
the
the
US,
US, definitely. I'll say US. I've read a few things.
In the
UK,
US,
no.
yes.
I've seen the stats from New York and what's been happening there in terms of their distribution of PPE. But what you have to understand is what happened in New York and America in general was a product of what they were being given as a directive by their own government and president. His response to COVID was slow and delayed, and his attitude to it was very different. And here in the UK, yes, we absolutely had an issue with PPE. It's still ongoing. And yes, there are certain parts I can only speak on London because that's the region I have the most oversight for. But certainly in the London region, there was issues, but it's a lot better than it had been before. But the challenge that we have now is not with masks and things for your face and gloves. It's more around the gowns, because historically they were mainly used for surgery and specific procedures in the hospital, and now generally across physical acute care and health care, they're using PPE in a different way. So there was some challenges with getting the stocks out, but it's not as bad as it was, and there is no significant difference between the hospitals that had more Black BAME colleagues in it than the ones that did not. So I wouldn't say that.
Okay,
I agree with that.
Adding to that, there was slightly a disproportionate distribution between NHS, side of healthcare with social care in London.
Yeah.
But that's evened out now. The social care aspects are getting more support as well.
Yeah, the social care was more of an issue.
Yes, it was. And the main reason is because they didn't know where to access it. So they had aligned in each clinical commissioning group, there was a named person that they could go to get the PPE from. And before, there was a real lack of organization around the distribution. So that is what impacted on social care colleagues getting the right access.
I think going back to what the gentleman said from the US about education is very important. And I feel like I wish I could create something that we can all share and disseminate with our communities, so that if they hear if so, for example, when COVID happened and you suddenly got a WhatsApp from your mum or your auntie about, eating onions now, we could reply back quickly with, no, that's trash, please stop that. And no, honestly, because why does fake news go viral and common sense doesn't? It really bothers me as a doctor. I'm constantly scolding my mum and my dad to the point where they don't even try it anymore. But what I have done is I've started a podcast, sorry for the shameless plug, which is to dispel myths about health issues. My first one was about coronavirus.
Can you drop the link?
Yeah, I'll share the link. The first one was about coronavirus, and the second one is about vaccines, because I think it's important for our community. What's really key and affects our health as a community is the lack of understanding about our rights, about health issues. I'll admit a patient who has high blood sugars, and they'll be like, and I'll ask them, do you have diabetes? And, this Asian or Black person would say, oh, no, there's something wrong with my sugars. I'm like, no, that's diabetes. Lord of mercy. What is your GP doing? And I'm not blaming the patient. I'm blaming the GP because the GP should have done something to educate. And I think, unfortunately, it's due to time. The GP doesn't have the time to explain all these things. So I think we can, as a community, try and think of new ways to share this, to break down the fake news and share facts, and how to talk to your GP, how to get the most out of your consultation with a physiotherapist, what things you should be following up with, not just relying blindly to your healthcare providers. It's a real challenge, but I think we can do that if we do work together and maybe think. I'm not that creative, but I think there are ways around that. Is
fake news a problem? Do you think fake news has affected how Black people interacted with
Absolutely.
COVID? Because I've seen the thing of Africans are immune, and there's a Cameroonian man in China.
Can I ask a question about that? Do we think that if the people that were delivering these warnings were, I don't want to say Black, but were just different, or there was more of your peers giving you that advice, do you think that more people might have taken it? Because the Black community didn't listen at first. They didn't.
Because they didn't think they were at risk, which is fair, because it was initially majority
old people, then white people.
Yeah. But I feel like you're right. I think possibly because the relationship between healthcare workers and Black people is tricky as it is anyway. So maybe it would have an impact. I am working with some friends to figure out ways of how to, whether a Q&A session like question time would be useful, or more webinars like this where you can say, okay, my relatives have questions, I want to ask. I think there are so many ways we can do this. We probably need to think and brainstorm about it. Yeah.
So do you firstly, just before we close, so for COVID-19 and the Black community, we probably would associate it more with pre-existing illnesses than race, or race than pre-existing illness.
Could I say something on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so New York, LA are some of, and Atlanta have some of the denser population of Black people, and that's what the international airports are. International airports bringing in these people who have it, and also that's where the poorest hospitals are as well. So now you see the highest density of Black people also has the lowest funded hospitals. So you're going to have situations there. They're not going to Kentucky. They're not going to Alabama. That's where the white people are. Now, unfortunately, it makes it seem like it's only affecting us, but it does affect us at a higher rate because we also have the worst grocery stores. We also have the worst educational systems. We also have the worst school lunches. So you have a lot of Black kids having childhood obesity, which leads to diabetes, which leads to other things, which leads to a bad
high blood pressure
lifestyle that now takes you into adulthood. Mama taught me to eat fried chicken. I'm gonna eat fried chicken, and then your portion sizes are also different. You don't have in Whole Foods. You don't have stores that sell vegetables. Everything is prepackaged processed foods. America is known for steroids. You see a 12-year-old girl looking like a 30-year-old woman. It's not because she just gifted. It's because she don't ate too many steroids. Now, unfortunately, these things also lead to issues with COVID. COVID becomes it ravages us because we really don't know better. And education, like I said before, plays a major part in that. But our communities is where COVID people land into. New York has Chinatown. LA has Chinatown. Atlanta has a big population as well of foreigners. So we're going to get hit before anybody else.
And is that for Britain too? Do we agree? I mean, he's spoken from an American perspective.
I mean, I grew up in Edmonton, right, North London, and I don't know how many chicken shops and kebab shops there are in my area. Like, I literally can't keep count. You know, there aren't any like healthy alternatives. So people are going to get kebab at lunch, and then after school they're going to get chicken and chips. You see people like in my area, chicken and chips is their dinner, like 5 days a week. And that can be because of socioeconomic reasons, but I grew up on like home cooked food. I think there was always rice at home. It was never takeaway. So I feel like these things, it's maybe not as bad as America, but we have our own version.
Draw parallels.
Sure. Before we close this, final thing: are we social distancing as Black people?
No, we're not.
I think someone's TV is on.
Let's put every one.
We can't afford to.
Whatever changes in the next few months.
Sorry. So, are we social distancing?
You have to unmute them, no?
Yeah.
I don't think we are. No.
Most people are kind of doing it. A lot of people are going from their quarantine like into their friend's house and quarantining with their friends. So that's not. I mean, does that defeat the purpose?
Yeah.
If you're if you've been home for a month and your friend's been home for a month, you're like, well, we're both. Does that defeat the purpose of doing that?
Yes.
So
yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Weren't people still going to church? People going to mosque.
There was
during
people
the
still
shutdown.
doing it.
Are we also educated enough in terms of washing the hands? Do we all really live up to what is what's been told to us? Wash your hands as much as you can. Use the hand sanitizer if needed. Are we doing that as a Black community?
I think one of the benefits, just a little slide jump in there, is you know how your mum always tells you to use your right hand for certain things, use your left hand for other things. I never really thought any kind of sensible benefit of that until right now.
Okay.
That's
So,
funny.
But Samson, how can we socially distance when majority of the colored community, I'll call it colored because that's what they call it, but majority of us work menial jobs. I don't, but most of the people that are in the community do. Bus drivers, restaurant workers, people who work jobs that they 2 weeks without a paycheck, they're gonna be on the street
yeah, but
because
you can still social distance even if you have. I mean, for
how you gonna do
example,
that on the bus?
Social
uh,
How you
distancing
gonna
is
do that
something.
on the train?
yeah,
It's definitely linked to economic status. I think if
Yeah,
you know, I
it
live
is.
in a 2-bedroom flat, and I know I've got enough space, but I know that some families will there'll be like 5-6 people in this house, and 1 or 2 of those people have to go take 2 buses to go to work, and you know the exposure is hard. It's not what everyone can do. If we can do it, we should be doing it. But yeah, that's the problem. I think it's easy to say that we should be social distancing if you haven't made accommodation for that. I've got an awful example to give you. A friend of mine whose mother's been re-diagnosed with leukemia. She's had to move out because she's a doctor. She's had to move out of her mum's house to live in a hotel, which took about a week or 2 to organise with the hospital. Thank God they did. So that if she does come in contact with someone with COVID, she's not bringing it to her mum, who is hugely at risk. You know, unless they're doing. So this is something that, because she's a doctor and she works in NHS, she's managed to. It took a while, but they managed to sort that out. But if you don't, and you work, like you said, a menial job, and you don't have that kind of support system, or you know, you can't necessarily really social distance. It's tricky, but
yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's been great. I've learned a lot. Thanks. I mean, I was trying to finish it for 7:25. Really had a great time talking to everyone. Do you want us to continue this, say maybe monthly or catching up or fortnightly?
Something. Can I add one thing before you stop?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, COVID-19 is a massive threat to the community, to our community. But I think there's a whole lot of scaremongering. There's a lot of focus on what is negative about COVID-19. But I think I want us to open our eyes and look at the opportunities coming forward. Okay, there's going to be a whole lot of opportunities in the nearest future. People should take time off to actually update their skills. Because the workplace is changing and it will change forever. It's not business as usual anymore after this, lockdown is over. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities there. I think I want us to probably in the next whatever we're having this discussion to actually think about that and see how we can reposition ourselves to benefit from.
So Victor, sorry, just to break you. I run Returnees and we do a lot of things. So we've been having this is like the 4th web discussion we've had. We've spoken on investment. We've spoken on entering new tools for learning new IT related jobs and getting into it. We've even done a webinar and training for Power BI. So this was our 4th discussion where we're talking about BAME community and how COVID is affecting us. If anyone wishes to join the Returnees network and you're not on it, please by all means send it to me and I'll add you in. And we'll continue having other discussions that are necessary to empower us.
So just lastly, also one thing, sickle cell. I know I'm aware of sickle cell because I've got relatives that have sickle cell, and they've gotten a letter saying that you're clinically high risk if you get it. Basically, just don't get it. It's not something you want to risk. But I'm aware that many Black people are not aware of their sickle cell status. So that might be something that people should look into as well, because you may not even be aware that you have this underlying health condition, which can, I think, even as
everyone be aware of the sickle cell status, though. How does most people are?
Apparently, I've spoken to a lot of people and they're not. If you don't know someone that has sickle cell, you may not be that aware of it. I live with it. I'm a trait, and apparently it can be bad for someone who is a trait to get COVID. And I didn't even know that. My sister told me that because she gets a lot of stuff because she got sickle cell. So it's something that people should be aware of as well.
Okay. Great stuff. Any suggestions before we leave? Moving forward?
Listen to my podcast.
Yeah. Post the link again so it's down at the bottom of the chat.
Yeah. we'll be having more webinars on other discussions. And like I said, if you wish to join any of our platforms, let me know. We'll add you in. It's been great having everyone.
Thank you.
Recorded, and
Thank
hopefully
you
we
all.
can have more of these discussions and just
Brilliant.
sharing ideas.
Thanks,
Thank
Sam.
you.
All right, thank you.
Take care,
Bye,
guys.
guys.
Take care,
Bye,
everybody.
Be safe.
Bye. Don't know anyone can hear me.
We heard you.
Oh, shame. Oh my, but mine might been on this whole time. Can't see me, can you?